Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Start Small, Think Big podcast brought to you by Digital Meld. My name is Brad Groux, co-founder and CEO of Digital Meld.
And I'm Matt Dorman, co-founder of NDEVR.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for joining us. Matt's going to bring us some great information this week about building and scaling digital systems for real business. And Matt, why don't you just take a couple minutes and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so I'm one of two co-founders of NDEVR. We're based out of Denver, Colorado, technically, but my partner, she lives in Florida, where our whole team has always been remote. About 10 years ago, we started. We're a small team. We primarily play on the digital side of website development, and so not really creative or anything like that. And we've always worked with larger, not always enterprise, but like larger companies that deal with the larger problems. I guess a problem set that's beyond just like, I need a website. It's a bit more involved than that.
Yeah, and so I'm guessing a lot of the companies you speak to, they may not necessarily have the largest technology teams, right? So you kind of have to fill multiple roles and wear multiple hats. Can you just take us through what your process is when you start talking to an organization, like what that kind of looks like?
Yeah, we definitely like to get a lay of the land of what they have internally. Or are they using other agencies, other digital marketing agencies? Like what's the whole ecosystem of who's helping them, essentially? Because like you said, sometimes we work with people with, let's say it'll be an IT department, and that IT department will obviously handle like desktop support or laptop support and things like that, but they don't necessarily handle the website infrastructure. Or sometimes they do, and so we have to integrate with them. So as a technical implementer or service provider, we deal pretty heavily on the IT side of things as far as like those types of teams, but we typically work with directly the marketing folks and product people that are building out or kind of describing their products.
It's great. So you don't necessarily always work with the technologists. You're more working with people just trying to solve a problem within an organization.
Yeah, for the most part, that's usually where we're working. Again, we're integrating with the technologists within the company, but sometimes they don't have anything at all, or they are just really focused on like true IT, like CIO type kind of organizational structure. Website stuff, they've usually outsourced that either to a hosting company or to agencies like ours, for the most part.
Okay, great. Could you just take a moment then to tell us the difference of what like tools and systems are?
That we use, or in general,
Just a general a little bit, and then I think maybe dive into what you guys do.
Yeah, so even before we started NDEVR, we were really focused on the open source space. So open source CMS space. So within that, you have Drupal, WordPress, even frameworks and PHP frameworks. So we really played in that space primarily. Over the last 5 years, though, we've shifted into other SaaS platforms that aren't really, so they don't have to host it themselves. So like a Shopify, even Wix and things like that, we're dealing with those types of web platforms. But again, it is primarily on the web platform side. And a lot of times it's e-commerce type systems or integrations with e-commerce systems is what we're building on top of.
Okay, great. And that's an area that I have a little bit of background with. I remember installing my first WordPress blog and Drupal and Joomla and stuff like that, 20 years ago at this point. It's pretty funny that, as much as things change in the website of things, a lot of things remain the same. Like WordPress is still the overwhelming majority of kind of things. Could you just talk about how you try to have to like drag folks maybe to the first century, as they say, to utilize new tools and understand that like, hey, makes more sense to utilize Shopify and just, hey, everything lives in that area than, trying to stand something up from the ground up?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Once they understand, like it's a cost thing, and it's not like a cost to build, it's a cost to maintain and support. I mean, we do support a number of WordPress sites still today, and we would still build on WordPress, but some companies, the reality is they're not building out a whole platform of systems and tools on their website. They just need to use the existing tool set that's already out there, because they are, I hate to say just a website, but they are just a web kind of presence that can utilize a simple e-commerce tool set like Shopify, or just a basic information with a blog. And you don't really need a full custom platform for those types of tools. So yeah, evaluating like what they maybe what they used to be as far as like organization. Maybe they're simplifying their organization, but also just letting them know that these other SaaS platforms are actually evolving, and what they used to think had to be done on WordPress or had to be done on a custom platform is not always the case anymore. Or the opposite, where they've started with Shopify or Squarespace, and they do actually need to do some custom development. So moving them the other way sometimes.
Okay, great. Now, are you seeing now that the barrier of entry and friction for web apps specifically is getting lower and lower, right? The tools are really great at actually doing that. People can vibe code something that's passable for maybe an internal use case and things. Are you seeing that leadership is understanding that maybe it's better to start building more custom solutions than taking this behemoth off the shelf solution that's a jack of all trades, a master of none? Are you seeing that leadership and businesses, are especially mid-market companies, 1,000 employees and below, are really taking that leap now?
I think we saw a couple of things last year and even starting out this year where some companies were going all in on like, oh, we can just have our internal product teams vibe code or build out a website. And they were testing that out, testing that model out. And not that it was a failure or anything like that, but realizing it hits a wall. That wall continues to kind of expand, I feel like, and they're able to build more and more. I don't know that anyone has where landed anywhere, I guess, because there's definitely I think a lot of things were tested in that model, but the websites that they had just kind of stayed as is. I don't think a whole lot of people made large investment or large kind of decisions to do one way or another, other than they were testing things out. Things they weren't really seeing either they weren't seeing results or they didn't see a reason to utilize those tools that they had kind of tested out, and they just stuck with what they had. I think we saw that more often than not last year, where people just kind of stayed put in the end. A lot of testing, a lot of trial for sure across the board.
Yeah, I think the vibe coding, it's a great tool for getting a proof of concept, getting something in front of people. That's what we tell people. Like, I was talking to some students at Texas A&M last night at an event, and I was shut up and build. Just build something, get it in front of people, get feedback. I think the vibe coding or just getting something a POC really quickly with those tools is very important for that. Find that product market fit, understand what the needs of people are. Obviously, to scale it for production use, you're going to need, let's be, let's not mince any words, for you to launch like an enterprise ready web app, at scale, you need a team of 10 to 12. You need a storage engineer, a network engineer, security engineer, front end UX design. You need, a developer to do things at a global scale. Let's say you're rolling out an actual program, then that's $500,000, $1 million. Most businesses don't have that much in the capital, but you could get there kind of a little bit using off the shelf solutions like a framework, or to get about, an off the shelf open source CMS or something to get the 80 or 90% there. So I think you choose the tool that's right for the job, right? I think to get that early buy-in, to show leadership of what's possible, and then maybe they dive more deeper into that. Can you talk about maybe some of those conversations that you have?
Yeah, I mean, a year and a half ago, it was great that you could do all these things with a free open source model, but you still needed developers, right? You still needed some level of developers to prove out your concept. But over the course of 6 months from that point, a year ago, product owners, product managers, people with very little development experience could talk essentially or type into a vibe coding platform and see a very functional representation of what they were trying to test out. And again, it didn't take a development team, didn't take all the systems admins. Obviously, you can't go to production with most of that at that point, but that's not what they needed. They needed something to be able to show to other people to get more ideas, or to pass around on the team, or even to show themselves. Like, I think that was the biggest thing, like the organizations I've worked with over the years. The product owners have these ideas, but they themselves need to see it, and as a developer, we had to build it for them so they could test it out and try out and then iterate that way. Now they can iterate for a couple of weeks even on the side and have something that's fully kind of baked out as far as an idea, and either go to market with a developer or even send it to, if they're still just testing things out and they don't need personal data or anything, they can send that live and then have a testing team, or testing real people utilize it. That's a big step forward. I think you still have to you're still potentially integrating with a large scale team if you're really going to market with something big from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, the vibe coding is not production ready, by any stretch of the imagination. It's to just know that people, just because you can get a functional website up and running, especially whenever it's about your business, you only have one chance to make a good impression. So you can't just go release something and then fall on your face, but it is great to get that buy-in from maybe other people across your organization, other people within your organization, or external partners. Get something in front of them really quickly. And I'll also say, we use vibe coding, for lack of a better term, to help sell. So like as we're talking to people, it's like we have a we have our discovery meeting with them, and we just come back with them. It's like, hey, this is the type of this type of thing we're talking about, and we're on the right track. And they can see something visually really quickly. And as I think decision makers, that's always been the hardest thing. Is like, how do you visualize things to folks? I mean, usually you have to come up with a PowerPoint presentation or use some of your back catalog of work that maybe was in the same arena. Now, could you get something up really quickly within a matter of hours and say, hey, it's just a framework. It's nothing crazy, but at least maybe that can help sell that story to folks in charge.
Right. Yeah, and it's also taking, I mean, it's taking essentially the best practices also, which is a nice, because these vibe coding tools didn't just like, oh, let's start things from scratch themselves. They're taking existing best practices around UI and UX, and then taking that level into the proof of concept. So you're not having to like reinvent everything. Like if people aren't familiar with it, you don't have to tell it like, oh, I need the text area to have 5 lines of it. It takes assumptions based on, again, the best practices that are already existing in design space or in UX or UI, and applies it for you without you having to actually think through every single thing.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot as well. I was talking to some students last night, and the younger student was, "Hey, I want to like build something, but what framework should I focus on? Where should I go?" And I'm like, the tools you choose to solve a problem now don't really matter. It's the idea, and then their faith and ability to figure things out, and then understanding the fundamentals. Like, I don't think you need to be. I think everybody going forward, no matter what your position is, if you're listening to this and you care about your job and your future, you should understand the core concepts of just object-oriented programming. The better you understand how computers think, the better you can succeed using these tools. And an example of that is if you learn something about vibe coding and how you deliver a product from A to Z, like you have this idea, you see it through fruition, you should understand like what a PRD is, or a product requirements document. Basically, that's a document that spells out what you're trying to do and the tools that you may use for that. And then these models reference that. And it's no different than Matt would sit down or I would sit down with the customer and saying, okay, what's your dream? And like let's document that, and then let's start that. We'll build out our sprints and stories and things to build that out from a DevOps process. Can you talk about the importance of you laying that foundation first before you start building, so either yourself or the models
Mhm.
understand that what problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, I really like that you're bringing this up because I haven't thought of it this way. Just to go back to what you were saying around, because I think we both have pretty similar backgrounds. I had a computer science degree, built right websites and things like that. But the tools that were coming out were quickly evolving to the point where people didn't have to have a computer science background to build websites, and that's still kind of the case up until a year and a half ago. And people would skip through it and not really understand what they were building. Same type of thing with these vibe coding tools. I think a lot of people, if they don't have the product background or haven't worked in product kind of life cycles and like with teams that have actually developed products, they can skip over all of those kind of steps of like really defining it. And even if it's in their head of what the problem is first, and not just here's an idea, like you need to have the problem to solve the problem. And the tool will make a guess at it. But if you're not kind of injecting the problem and actually telling it, no, this is the actual problem and this other problem can exist, and thinking through that as necessary as possible, because it will allow you to skip all those things and then output something
Mhm.
that kind of looks like it's functional. But if you haven't thought through the whole kind of product, like a real product requirements document, ideally, but at least outlined it in some way and then put it into the tool, it's going to.
Yeah, I really think it's important for people to understand the fundamentals of how these models work. Again, whether you need a computer science degree or not, I think you understand how the models think. And that's what I try to preach. I think that's one reason we started this podcast. Most of our listeners aren't technical people. The first 10 or 12 episodes were us explaining the importance of data and context and business process. It's funny when I would talk to students or I go talk to at events, I print out our flyer about what our company does, and then I print out a flyer like outlining what a process is. It's literally just a process flow with the boxes, because how a model thinks and how these automated tools think, whenever you go through vibe coding, it's using a process. Whenever you're trying to solve whenever you're trying to solve problems across your organization, you should look at the processes first, because streamlining those processes will help get you there. And I think it's really funny to me how the parallels of what these tools do and then what businesses do are actually there. People just don't understand it. And so can you maybe just talk about making scaling possible is like about removing friction, and how some of those tools can help, if you understand how the logic between like what you need for a PRD, a product requirements document, can kind of help you not just with building a website or building a web solution, but just your business as a whole from a technology perspective.
Yeah, I think stepping back and really, again, I kind of mentioned it, like identifying what the problem that you're trying to solve is I think that's really basically step one, right? And being able to identify and actually in a way that's as succinct, or not succinct, actually as descriptive as possible, to outline all the potential problems that you are either trying to solve with this, or that might arouse as you're solving one problem, then it's going to create two others, and things like that. Because again, every time you have an input into it, it's going to create some kind of output. And I don't want to get off track. I'll probably get off track a little bit, because I feel like when we were trying to vibe code early on, and not vibe code, but like test out these vibe coding tools, it was hard to understand their process, because you would input, a request or a problem, and it would output, well, what do you think about this? And it would be, sometimes it would really well solve the problem, but then it would make so many other changes. As a developer, we're looking at the lines of code, or as a development team, we actually look at the lines of code that it outputs, right? And it's like, well, why is it changing all of these other things? And that's kind of a black box area for a lot of these tools, where you just see, it'll just show you and kind of make it look like it solved that problem. And the reality is, it created two other new problems, or it actually sometimes goes back to an old problem and overwrites it. And if you're not kind of, alluded to before, understanding what it might be doing, or understanding how it's trying to solve problems, you can really get confused of like what it's trying to tell you that it solved, I guess.
No, it's great that you bring that up because much like if you're using an LLM and you're just asking a question and starts hallucinating and give you crazy information that's not actually true, it does that at the coding level. It does that at every level. And so you just need to make sure, again, we always say that AI is getting us about 80% there. That last 20% there is the spit and polish and your secret sauce and all those sorts of things. And so there's no real shortcut for that. There is a shortcut for a lot of the menial tasks. It's funny that because the PRD, we follow the McKinsey and Company model. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? No matter where we go, who we talk to, what tech, we don't just do web apps and app development. We do basically everything from an enterprise technology perspective. And it's just, what problem are you trying to solve? And we're going to use whatever tool makes the most sense with the least friction to get that there. And I think that's anytime you're trying to solve a problem in your organization, and you should think in the same manner. And you don't need a PRD or product requirement document. Maybe it's a PRD for a process requirement document. Everything you do whenever you start is like, what is our goal, and what are the bells and whistles and or the systems and services that we need to include within that goal? And that's your guiding light for building these solutions. And that's the only way people can really scale at a large, is to have those standard operating procedures, right?
Right. Yeah, I think with these tools, the one thing that's hard, or is definitely getting lost, even in our thought process, is the ability to maintain them, right? Like part of the input in some of those processes before was, well, what does your team look like today? Like, what is their kind of experience level? What are they supporting today? And that was a big requirement around what you would build, on what platform you would build. Versus now, a lot of these, well, whether it's vibe coding or not, or just Claude code, let's say, and you're building out something from scratch, you can pick almost anything you want, because you don't have the dependency of like my team building it, but you're still going to have to think about the team maintaining it. And kind of like and also like what we were talking about, like it will output something that's probably functional and complete, but if you can't evaluate what it built, like if you don't know the underlying platform, you can't rely on an AI LLM or Claude code, or something like that, to then evaluate itself very well yet. You can almost, I've tried to have them, and this is like, I've tried to have them evaluate each other, like have one create a tool, and then have, like, we use Claude code and Copilot, GitHub Copilot, for a lot of our development, and then having it evaluate or it review code, even legacy code, has been a tool. It's a nice kind of output, but it still has only a certain level of understanding of what like the ecosystem is supposed to be. Um, Even though has access to the whole code set.
You bring a good point where, communication is key. The three experiences that make scaling possible, and that includes the audience experience, the operator experience, and the builder experience. And you need feedback from all of those. You can't just have overwhelming one and overwhelming another. And I think a lot of times that's where these automation and you get in trouble with these tools, is because you rely on them so much that you're getting it only from your perspective. And internally, we like to create a center of excellence wherever we get involved, and so we get key stakeholders from every part of the business to make sure we have a guiding light for what that business is trying to solve, not just what that team or that person's trying to solve. And can you talk about where companies that you come across, they may break that experience and they may fall in those traps? instead of like trying that to keep those three experiences all rowing in the same direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very often that most do a good job at kind of focus on, we call it the audience experience, or the kind of end user experience, because most of the time they feel like that's the problem they're trying to solve, and like internally, and how they can make money, right? To for whatever reason, they're 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 making money off of ads, they're making money off of the product they're selling, whatever. So that there's an end goal there that's a really direct correlation. But most of the time, the other two, well, the people that are building the tools, or the people that are creating the content or creating the product set for the end goal, is what's lacking. In my mind, typically just they don't feel like they're as important, because again, there's not a direct correlation between the physical change they're going to do and then the transaction, a lot of times. So it's a little bit further away. Yet they all three have impacts on the financial impact, I would say.
Yeah, the financial impact is a great segue, because I think AI and automation in the real world has one conversation that generally happens at the top of businesses, is like, what's our ROI? If we invest $100,000 into AI and automation or a new tool, when are we going to reap the benefits of that? And I think there's been a lot of pushback, I think, to organizations now, because they bought into the snake oil that this solution can solve everything for us, or these local LLM models are going to solve everything and transform our business overnight. And I think we both understand that that's not true. Again, it gets you about 80% there. You need to teach people how to use it. And more importantly, you need to teach these tools about your business. And it takes experts like yourself and myself to make that happen, or internally with your organization. It takes champions to do that. And so can you just talk where AI is actually delivering ROI right now and where it's not?
Yeah, I've read some reports recently, and this is over the past couple of days, around that it seems to be making a bigger impact on like a management tier, or like the people that are overseeing the people doing work, let's say, to really generalize it. And I think that's because it's optimizing their ability to evaluate data, I would say. Like in my role as like an architect or a lead developer on projects, I can look at line by line of code and see how things are being done. But that's really arduous. It takes a lot of time to do that, a lot of effort, a lot of mind and time to do it. But if I can use tools to look at the lines of code, or look at the commits, look at the issues, and kind of evaluate the whole ecosystem, and actually kind of give me a summary of it, that makes me more efficient at like fighting like the smaller fires, let's say, right? And having like my skill set actually being applied to my team, versus the management day-to-day stuff that they don't really need me to do, but I have to do it because, I have, in my case, I have clients that I need to report to and give them feedback. But in some organizations, you obviously bubble up into executive levels. So it's giving some efficiencies there. I don't know this, but I was also reading that they're saying that at the worker, and again, just generalizing it, the worker level, people that actually do the work. And I think this is kind of accurate, because of what I've seen. You're having to do more effort to get the same thing sometimes. Like it feels like you're doing a lot faster, but you're doing a lot, but not actually doing the things that need to get done sometimes. And it's kind of just inflating the work, but not inflating the output. I think that's a generalization, but I have seen it myself in a lot of cases, where it's like a cool new tool doing these cool new things, but in the end of the day, it didn't actually improve the one thing I needed to get done sometimes.
Yeah, to try and bring that up as well, because I think we see that as well. Basically, generally, the executives will go to a conference, or they'll be talking to people, other executives on a golf course, and like, yeah, we use this tool for us, and it like transformed our business. And then that tool is not knowing that tool was built specifically for that business line of business, or it just happens to that model that was trained happens to excel in that line of business, and not knowing, and they're trying to sell it to more lines of business, and it doesn't necessarily work. And I think, again, context is key in everything. That's where the PRD comes in, the requirements document. The more context you give it to you about your business, the better. But there is no turnkey solution with AI and automation. The first time you use ChatGPT, it's great. But it's a glorified search engine that can do some really cool things for you. The more it learns about you, the more context you provide it, the better, the tone of your voice, the tone of your writing, the information about your business, the better it gets over time. That's no different than the solutions you're trying to build internally within your organization as well. You're starting at a greenfield level at this thing that's a toddler or a baby in intelligence. And the more information you work with it, the you have to nurture it. It's not something you set it and forget it. These models are things you have to nurture. And so you've talked about how you've seen, and especially in mid-market and smaller companies where they try to utilize these tools maybe and they fall on flats. Can you talk about common workflow categories that actually do scale well with AI and where you can get that immediate ROI without that like heavy lift?
Yeah, I think the research. So whether we're doing research on, we run a business, right? So we have to do RFPs and responses to things like that. Research, that time that it took to do that is greatly reduced. I can now respond to things very quickly. The research on issues of like a site is having, for our case, like websites have issues, right? They're not like, for some reason, the code doesn't change, users don't change, but then things break, right?
Hmm.
Our ability to like see, like find in that issue is greatly kind of accelerated by using tools that can just look at all the logs. It can look at all the logs, look at all the traffic logs. It can look at all the code changes and actually put that all together in, I would almost say seconds, but it takes a little bit of time to like point it to the right things. So within minutes, it's identifying big problems that we would have almost never found, because it's like one of those things where things break and then they quote unquote fix themselves because the things don't line up again for another month or so. But those tools can look at it and actually put the things in line and tell us exactly what happened and why it happened. I mean, that's how we're really using it a lot of times, is just evaluating data and evaluating all the extra things. I think the way when we first started, we were using it to like tell us, like do the research and tell us kind of feedback. And I would tell my business partner, I was like, I don't have time to read. Like it would just regurgitate so much information. It has definitely gotten better about like understanding, whether it's understanding us or not, I don't know, but like understanding that it needs to like refine it to like 5 bullet points, let's say, and point me in the right direction to make me feel like it's smart, maybe is what it used to be doing.
Yeah, I remember GPT-4 specifically. It was very verbose, right? It was like, oh, that
Hmm.
was great. You said a whole lot, but you can then you go like the Copilot and say, can you actually summarize this for? Like I would just use different models. Like this is what it pulled out. Can you just summarize this? Give me an executive level summary. And it's funny how it is hadn't gotten tighter because I think that feedback has come back as you people, a thumbs up and thumbs down
Yeah.
responses. And I
I,
think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I am so glad that we've gotten to the point almost where we don't have to use different like model
Hmm.
number. Like I'm a technologist and I don't understand what these things are supposed to mean. I have to look them up, right? I don't have a real user who's ever, and they finally like, I can just go to one and it can try to, I feel like it's better at figuring out like what I'm asking, and it'll just process it the way it's supposed to now. Much better than it did 6 months ago, I would say, or late
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, and you bring a good point because much like people get, I was talking to again some students last night, and they were like, they were having where like, where should we get started? How should we do things? I want to choose this tool set or choose this, and it reminds me of all the YouTube channels and all the feedback that's basically what we call organizational porn. At the end of the day, or like, oh, what tools are you using to organize your daily life? Whether it's this tool for doing your to do list, and this tool for like at the end of the day, you're spending so much time managing your framework of how you're going to work instead of actually getting work done. And I think people fall into that. It looks like busy work with the organizations. Like I'm doing a lot. Like look, whatever I'm doing. And I think models fell into that. Is like, hey, if I show them this 5,000 word response or something with 500 words, hey, I'm showing my value. And I think no, it's keep things concise, keep things focused, and hone in on those things. And utilizing these tools. One of these tools are really good is building out those SOPs, helping build out those policies, and helping build out those PRDs. I always take the PRDs and understand like, oh, hey, I don't know all the underlying things that I need to know for this idea. These models do, and so utilize these tools to get there. And then that way, whenever you're building things, you can focus on the meat and potatoes, as they say.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet as far as like not having to pick the tool set and just like the one I'm going to use, I'm just going to use and it's going to figure it out. But I think we're getting very close to that right now where like I've kind of centered around, I think the Anthropic Claude tool set, again, it does development really well on the terminal side. And then the LLM one, it's actually really good for me. It does the research when I need research. It'll give me the outline of the really brief bullet points for the most part. I think I figured out how to. I didn't know this until maybe 4 or 5 months ago that you can actually tell it to not make you feel good, basically, right? Like the amount of times it would say, "You're absolutely right, Matt."
Yeah.
Like, I need to be challenged. Like, you need to challenge me on my things. I'm not right most of the time, I don't think. So stop telling me that I'm absolutely right and I should be doing the thing that I asked you to if I should be doing.
No, that's you bring up an interesting point because it is one of those things that their generative models are going to like come up with. If they don't know the answer, generally they're not going to say we don't know that answer. They're just going to take whatever they think is the best answer and provide you an answer. And I think a lot of times they didn't want to give you that feedback. And we use Claude almost exclusively right now just because it's the best model. Again, use the tool for the job when you're trying to solve that problem. That tool is going to change within 2 months or 3 months. Claude Sonnet 4. Or Claude Opus 4.5 is the best coding model now, or the overall planning model, the high vision model. And then you can utilize Sonnet for a Claude Sonnet, so you do some of the actual tasks in your development, and they could save some tokens there. So just understand that you can't possibly understand all those models and what they're trying to do. We can't. We're technologists and we can't keep up with it. And the big thing is make sure that you have your documents in place, your SOPs in place, and then that's what you train the models on when the new great model comes out. You have these documents, you just point to that, and then you're back up and running. Can you just talk about how you evaluate when you're talking to an organization? Is this a one-off trick or a repeatable system?
I mean, thankfully we work in a like being in web, let's say, most things they're not a one-off. Like, you're not coming up with unique ideas that like no one else has ever thought of. For the most part, you might have a very good way of like defining your product and having like giving specifically need. And then, I mean, I think you're alluding to like, or asking about like if we build custom solutions maybe. And that's a case where like pretty similar to should we use a SaaS platform or should you use whether it's WordPress or custom development, right? Like if their business, like if they're doing something that is actually a technology focus and no one else is doing it that way, then the custom platform, custom solution is kind of typically going to be the model, at least to start with. But most people in our kind of ecosystem that we deal with, the types of businesses that we deal with, they're either trying to create they're using a website to disseminate information and now to LLMs or to SEO, like, or to people, right? But that's just information, that's just text and images, and that's a website. Or they're trying to sell something, and typically that's a typical checkout process. But every once in a while, more often than not for us, is that we're dealing with something like they're selling a subscription to be able to do certain things on a website or be able to do things in apps. And those are solutions that are almost always still custom. And when I say custom, I mean, it's not an off the shelf product, but it's no longer custom like hardcore development, at least, because of some of these other tools out there that are building based on ideas.
Yeah, it's a great explanation because we call them catered solutions. We don't like to say
Mm,
custom because I think
that's a good
it's
way of
like when
putting it.
because basically you're picking and choosing things from different areas that, hey, we don't need to reinvent the wheel over here, but we do over here. And so
Mhm.
we're just it's like catering, like you're just using some things that are custom and some things that are you're just trying to solve the problem with the least amount of friction and get them their instant ROI. And for us, we preach the process maturity and how that needs to be true before like AI and automation works. And again, can you talk about how an experience is whenever you go in greenfield to an organization and they have no idea what's going on and they're just running around with chickens with their heads cut off and they're just they're fighting fires all day versus the ones that come prepared? What that kind of does for the instant output and ROI you see, but also just like reducing friction.
So a lot of times it's coming in. So a lot of times the firefighting is it's either, well, it's almost always like that's how they've always done things, I feel like. And resetting that takes a bit of time because they need to see um, what it would be like if they didn't have to just fight fires all the time. Like, some people need to feel important, I guess,
Mhm.
is one way to put it, right? So they only feel, well, everyone needs to feel important, but some people feel like they're important if they're fighting like current problems and not like thinking forward to things that are going to solve the problems that the company needs. So that's a like it's hard for us because we're not a big consulting, like, we don't go into the big consulting problems and like tell them how to reorg their kind of mindset. We can talk through that on individual basis, and it's usually by just fixing problems very quickly and trying to get reset so that they can start to feel what it looks like to really be able to like not have to fight the fires, not have to like only fix problems, and they can actually start to plan out and we can get through the backlog of things. It takes time, unfortunately, for those types of things to occur because they don't understand what it would look like until they're actually in it. And we have to be able to get that quickly reset or kind of shift the kind of path forward to that point. We I mean, again, we're typically in smaller organizations where that can typically take weeks, thankfully, and not. I mean, I've worked at big corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations where that can take a year plus of just planning out how to do that. I don't really like to play in the year type things anymore. I like to try to get reset people really quickly. So the smaller organizations are easier to do that for our world.
Yeah, that's the world we love working in as well. Because again, if I need a decision maker, I can go knock on their door. I don't have to go through 7 layers of management to get there. And I think that's where really important. These tools are going to help those smaller mid market companies, like we say, punch above their weight class. But because they're more nimble, because they are more prone to approaching and using these tools without having 24 people on a DevOps call, But I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, not so much the fun stuff, but also the important stuff. Like, you deal with e-commerce, you deal with people's shopping experience. Can you just? I think we should just touch base on governance that doesn't kill momentum, but permissions, data boundaries, and auditability, and how you have those discussions, and how that should be foundational, even as everyone wants to see the bells and whistles. Make sure that governance is always at the forefront too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the ability for a company to be nimble with you said frictionless essentially is something that I think a lot of people would go into that mindset of saying or thinking that means that that one person can do all the things and that makes it faster, right? And that kills any type of idea of governance of like, well, no, there still needs to be a process, but we need to make that process very streamlined, and so that whether it can be automated, and a lot of times with smaller companies, it can at least be automated where it's doing some type of checking, some type of verification that, that for some things that we deal with, they're selling content, let's say, and you need to make sure that that's not in some way a copyright infringement or something like that. And those are checks that used to take, it had to go shipped out to another company or something. But now we can integrate with other tools, and there's API systems that'll actually do that for them and check it, at least to give them this is pretty likely to not have a problem. And then, or it needs to go through some type of legal review, and that being able to kind of accelerate that process by doing those checks first, and then it goes into the legal department. But the legal department's like, well, it's already been checked. They typically don't have to take as much time to go through the process that they used to. Those are kind of like vague-ish responses, I guess, because each company is very different on what they feel like is governance and like the process that it takes. Some just the owner needs to look at it, and as long as they have a quick way of seeing it, then that's as frictionless as it can be. But typically, it's not. Hopefully, it's not like one person. Like, unless it's a one person company, we deal with that even at that scale. So
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned leadership, because that's kind of where I was taking things next, and like leadership, change management, and adoption, and how that tends to be the human bottleneck, right? Leadership set in their ways, doesn't want to change. So how can you? I'm sure you've talked to people in an organization that are really passionate, and you need to get evangelists to help you drive that adoption internally. You can't come in as an outside organization. So can you just give any feedback or stories to folks who they see areas of improvement that they know within your organization? How can they help get buy-in from either their team or their leadership as a whole to utilize the services of someone like yourself?
yeah, I think, well, you just say that it's an AI tool, and
Yeah.
no matter what, you're going to get buy-in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, joking aside, you have to show that you have to give them the information that they need to show that there's going to be some type of improvement. It's usually a monetary improvement, right? Like, it's going to save time, it's going to make money in some other way. And the more data we can have, so the more data we have to support that. Sometimes we have a hard time doing that kind of publicly, and it's really easy when I can have a conversation with someone, because I need to understand like the problem that they want to solve, and then I can very quickly tell them the solution or a plan for a solution that's going to do those things to save them the money that they need to do, or make them the money that they then can sell to their kind of top leadership, because it's almost always about either time or money, and usually both they're kind of coincide. But again, as a pure technology company, we're not a marketing agency, so we have a hard time like expressing that publicly, because the problems are very kind of broad, and I can say, yes, we're going to help you save money, or we're going to help you make money. It's like, cool. That's what everyone says. But until I know what the actual problem is, I can't do different companies, I think.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because I'm a technologist. I'm not a salesperson, but as the face of the company, I need to be out there trying to also sell as well and being part of that process. And when people ask, what can you guys do? I'm like, really, what can't we do? We focus on understanding what process is. We understand what building foundation is, what using the right tools for the job is. There isn't much in the grand scheme of things that we can't do. The hardest thing we have to do is get your knowledge out of your head to understand what you actually need us to how we
Yeah.
actually need us to serve you. Could you just talk about how the importance of designing automation and tools that people actually use? Because a lot of times people, again, you kind of brought it up jokingly, that leadership will say, hey, we're going to implement AI just because we need to implement AI, to make the shareholders happy, or our partners happy. What are some ways that you can actually design automation that people actually use?
I think part of it is going back to what you were saying. Like, as soon as we can get conversations about like what their process is, what their kind of current steps are to do their day to day, right? Like, that's one area that we play in really well around the editorial systems, or we call them creator experience, where the people creating the content or managing the content or managing the product set, right? Like, there's a certain set that every company has. Like, again, there might be pulling it from some other third party. Like, letting them document and letting us watch what that process is, and then putting the solution in place that's going to automate some of those steps, all of those steps. Not, and by automate, I mean like just so that they're clicking a button and it does a bunch of things, and then they see a thing, and then they click another button and they do a bunch of things. Versus copy, paste, edit, copy, paste, edit. Like, the more we can see of their current workflow, and it is getting, because they can say it, but until you actually see it and then come up with, well, why did you do that? And it's like, well, I've always done that. It's like, honestly, I didn't even know that button. Like, when we work in like WordPress, let's say, I didn't even know that button existed. Like, I thought that was deleted 10 years ago, type of thing. It's like coming up with those, because, and they don't think of, if they just told you what they do, they're probably not even going to think about that. But until you can actually watch them do their day to day sometimes, and then document it, and give them some fresh ideas. Because again, sometimes it is just automation isn't always a technology solution. I think, actually, sometimes it's just a workflow, manual workflow. Like, well, there's this other thing that you could have been doing, and technically that's a technology thing, but it was already built. They didn't have to build it from scratch.
Yeah, we find that overwhelmingly most of the time whenever they're like, we have inefficiencies, that we think it's the technology. It's not the technology, it's their process. It's their lack of communication. That I love sitting down with organizations, just whiteboarding that process. And was like, yeah, did you know this bottleneck existed? And again, this is where I think the problem with trying to deliver technology based upon the needs of leadership, like that's where you're set up to fail, is because the boots on the ground, the people who are living with these issues every single day, are the ones you need to get that feedback and information from. You don't see that at your 30,000 foot view as an executive. And that's not a slide on executives. That's just saying that's just not the world you live in. And so you need to get those folks involved to understand what those true pain points are, because they're probably doing something like you said, and like you, same sort of thing. Is like, we've been doing it that way. It's like, yeah, we've been doing
Yeah.
that for over 20 years, man. And we've been trying to tell you, but that kind of thing. I think one of the areas that is greatly being affected by these models is the vibe coding era, right? And I'm guilty of this as well. It's like, oh, I could just go build it myself instead of hiring an expert or a team of experts. And so, can you just break down for folks, because we were kind of talking about this early, like GitHub Copilot you talked about? To me, that's the best $90 you can spend a year as a solopreneur or a small team member. GitHub Copilot is $90 a year for, I think, the individual plan. And it gives you access to all kinds of models, Gemini and Claude and all these other sorts of things. And it works with you a little bit differently than these vibe coding tools. It works with you within your in development environment. It's your partner. It's augmenting you instead of replacing you, where vibe coding is kind of replacing you. Can you just talk about how vibe coding is great to, again, get that proof of concept, but how you need an expert like yourself or you're a team of experts who are augmented by these tools to actually deliver the polished product?
Yeah, I think this goes beyond just like experts of an agency or an outside source. I think this is a big mistake that companies have made this year or this last year, where they've decided to let go engineering teams or architects, right? Because they thought they see these tools building all the things. Like, what do they need the people that were building the things? Well, that's, I think, the piece missing that they didn't realize is how much thought goes into these things. Because I can be like, as again, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, web development. I can still only do so much, because I can only control these tools so much, and then look at the output and then evaluate it and do it. So I'm still only so efficient, but it also takes a very high degree of like my brain power and energy. Um, to work with these tools sometimes. And like these, the more integrated they can be into the process, the tools, like you said, like again, Claude Code is kind of a, for us, it's not, well, they are building one that I can actually go into VS Code and actually kind of compete with Copilot in a way that it's now it lines up with our current developer workflow, let's say, right? Versus it took extra time because I had to go to this other tool and then it would output it into a place where, is in the code, but it's also, I then have to go back into VS Code and kind of go in circles with platforms. The more integrated these tools are with the existing, we talked about it a little bit before, but like the more integrated they can be with my team's existing workflows and then help them accelerate that, the better. Most of the vibe coding ones were very much built to just do their thing and build out a cool website that's visual but can't go in your hosting environment or shouldn't go public yet. So I kind of talked in circles there, I feel like.
No,
Sorry.
I think it's really important that people understand. I want to make it a point that just because I can, like, I'm a solutions architect, so I understand that
Sure.
30,000 point view. I understand the integrations, I understand the data, I understand all the moving components. I would say on the development scale, because I've met expert level developers, savant level developers, I'm probably a 5. I'm certain you're ahead of me in that game. There's always going to be someone who knows
I want
more, and that's, yeah. There's always someone that knows more, that understands more. These tools just help, that me as a 5 get up to a 7, but I'm never going to replace a 9 or a 10. But then organizations just know that there's varying levels of degrees that these tools help with. But the important thing is you still need that expert level, especially for something that's going to be the face of your organization, like your website, like your web presence, like a solution. You're going to need experts to make sure you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, and you're laying that foundation that you're not going to keep you up at night. It's like, is someone going to, expose our credit card, customer data or all those sorts of things. So you need to have those folks in place. The vibe coding is great to get you get you your first iteration, get feedback, but you need to hire experts that are augmenting themselves with these tools to see it across the finish line. Awesome. So I think we're going to start winding things down. I think I could talk to you all day, especially with how rapidly the web is changing with these tools. But so we're just going to wrap it up with a lightning round, just a couple, 3 or 4 quick fire questions we ask you that you just provide really quick, 30, 60-second responses, and we'll go from there. So what's one AI trend leaders should pay attention to?
I'm in a rut right now. It's hard to think of good things with AI. I think I think more people are doing this also, is to question the efficacy or the actual ability of these tools. Again, it still feels promising. This still feels like we're almost there, but I feel like 6 months ago I would have said the same thing, and it's like, well, why are we still not almost there, type of thing. The promises just keep coming, and the delivery is, it's
I
close.
think I think that's the perfect answer, because again, we see the promise of what's coming. We see the potential of what's coming with these tools. There's the constraints from power and compute and cost and these things. We're much with AI and automation. We're in the AOL days of the internet, right? Still, you can do some really cool things. You can build some websites, do some cool things, show some information. But the true power and potential of these tools is coming down the line. That's why you need to set your foundations now, your SOPs, your processes. So whenever these tools are truly revolutionary and flipping a switch and that they get solved, you're ready from that perspective. So I'm really glad you brought up. I think with the trends that AI leaders should be paying attention to is it's overhyped right now. Not saying that you can't do things now, because it's a cyclical, right? Like Google, and Google and Microsoft and all of those are hyping these products because they're partnered with NVIDIA, who's now a multi-trillion-dollar company. It's a cyclical. They're investing in data centers. They're all working together, and they're just boosting each other's profits, And so they're selling pickaxes during a gold rush. At the end of the day, that doesn't mean you can't actually go make a lot of money in a gold rush, but you have to be methodical about it. Some people are going to get lucky and just hit the lotto, but at the same time, you have to. So I'm really glad you brought that up instead of just naming a new tool or trend, because I think that's more important. Be more self-reflective about that. What's one automation system that some folks could try this week? Necessarily not even something that's a lower barrier of entry, just so folks can understand more about what these tools can do.
Yeah, I think Claudebot is the one. It's not really an automation. Well, it is. It's potentially an automation for everything. From what I've read and from what I've kind of dabbled in so far, I've installed it on a separate device, and I have it accessing one account, which is interesting. I don't know how much trust I have in it yet. Don't go installing this on your personal laptop, I would say, yet, or maybe ever. But it's a really cool kind of idea, and I think that this is maybe the next level of automation for individuals or personal, whether it's your professional or even personal life. I think being able to like basically tell it to do something, and then it has control over an entire machine. So That's cool.
I love that you brought up Claudebot, which is now called Moltbot, Molt,
Mhm.
because it was CLAWD, and
A little
then
too close.
Anthropic came in. It was a little too close to, and so it's Moltbot. I'm actually releasing my first product today after this. That's one reason I'm a little tired, is I was vibe
Ah,
coding all night and working on thing, and it's mostly vibe coding. I've been sharing that journey on my Twitter and on my LinkedIn. So linktree.com/digital meld, or just Brad Groux everywhere on those. And you'll get access and see all those kinds of, but it's funny that you literally brought up, because it's a open source project that was built all with Claudebot, and Sonnet, or Opus 4.5, that I'm launching today on GitHub. So I'm really glad you brought that up. It is an amazing tool. It's not for the faint of heart. I set up with Microsoft Teams, so I chat with Teams, and I was able to send it. I was driving back and forth from Houston to College Station last night for an event at Texas A&M, and I was having it do DevOps sprints while I'm driving in my car and sitting in traffic by having voice chat with it with Microsoft Teams. And so, whole great thing. It's an amazing tool.
I
Don't use it in production. Use it for your personal workflow on your personal. I have a Mac Mini as well, for sure.
I'll definitely check out yours because I feel like the other things, the amount of people saying it can do amazing things and then not showing anything is overwhelming to look at. So I'll be curious to see
That I'm releasing videos in the repo today within the several hours, and at the very top of my readme.md, my repo,
is
is
don't do
10
that.
things to watch out for agentic AI, like security. Don't dive into this unless you understand the ramifications of not doing things correctly. So yeah, I love the tool. It's transformed my workflow. I haven't slept much in the last week as I've dove into it, but the power of the tools that are coming, that's the first time I was like, oh my god, this is changing everything. But again, you still need the experts, you still need the understanding, so kind of go from there. And so, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. It really is great to get the perspective of someone like yourself. We love talking to experts to understand what you're seeing across your customer base and across the industry. And so I just want to open the floor up for you for the next 2 or 3 minutes to talk about yourself, talk about NDEVR. How can people get a hold of you, or any pieces of lasting knowledge you want to send out to the world?
Yeah, I don't know about lasting knowledge for sure, but if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm very open to connections on LinkedIn. If you have questions, I give out free advice and love to just talk to people about different things like we were talking about before. I love to find out problems, and whether I have a solution or not, at least we can brainstorm some things. So love to go through that on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to find me through there, to the company, our company is spelled really weird, NDEVR. We were really cheap on the domain name 10 years ago and couldn't even put any vowels or .com. So LinkedIn's easiest way to get a hold of me, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to sing Matt's praise again. We've had some technical difficulty, and he stuck through this whole conversation. And if that's any way, he probably is really great to work with the same way. Like anytime you hit a roadblock, he's gonna plow through it and do the same thing. So thank you so much, Matt. All his information, Matt. Maybe if you have a booking link, send that to me, and I'll include it as
Okay.
well. So because
Yeah,
people set up a short 30 or 45-minute call with
sure
you, I'll
thing.
include that in the newsletter. So we send out a newsletter that's accompanies with this, and it's on LinkedIn as well. And so we'll tag you and tag the company. And our goal is for people really reach out to Matt, understand more about what Matt and NDEVR are doing. The web space is an area that you can utilize these tools and punch above your weight class. And just because you're a mom and pop shop doesn't mean you can't have a website and a web presence that rivals the big boys. So just know that tool. Any lasting thoughts before we close out?
No, not at all. I mean, one thing about us is we also have a little tiny podcast, but it's
Awesome.
much more lighthearted. It's called Boozy Browsing. It's a lot more fun to deal with technical issues when you're having a drink. I will
That's
say that.
awesome. It's like a drunk history. Like it's one of my favorite ones. So
Yeah, we're not quite as good, but it is fun to at least participate.
yeah, so I'll make sure, and again, send it to me when you send me your booking link. I'll include that as well. And so everything we talked about in this podcast, including Claudebot, now called Moltbot, Molt from like shedding the skin of a lobster, that'll be in the show notes. The information I shared about what I'm launching today, which is a Kanban board for my Claudebot. So it's basically to automate. I need that visualization on there. All that'll be in our show notes and our newsletter, which will be out the same day that this comes out. And so just hit up linktree.com/digital meld. The very top one's the newsletter, all the other podcast areas, and the newsletter will have all Matt's information and link to everything. So again, Matt, thanks for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Appreciate you for sticking out the technical difficulties and for putting good things out there and hoping good things come back. That's how we kind of preach things. And so listeners, thank you so much. We hope you got something out of this, and we hope you start small, think big, and we'll see you next time. Bye. We want to hear about your AI and automation journey, and we'd love for you to get involved with Start Small, Think Big. If you'd like to participate or offer feedback, please reach out to us anytime via email at contact@digitalmeld.io or use the contact form on our website, digitalmeld.io/contact. Also, please help spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks.